Hey folks, previously I talked about how to configure Cypress after version 10. This time I want to talk about how to eliminate some of the redundancy between config files that may have that are targeting different deployments or local. So quick reminder, all my tasks, like the node code that I want to run in the browser or in some API tests, I like to have them nicely under the support folder under tasks. And usually I do default exports just to keep these files very clean. It doesn't have to be default exports, but you may run into these issues where you're trying to run node-only things in the browser and run into cryptic issues, right? And when these files become too big, any bad import can just become like a ridiculous error that you're surprised about. So I like them as default exports for that reason, and I like to put them in this folder. And in turn, we we can just not look at the complex launch Darkly stuff for now, but we just import them and then add them into the task file. And this, by the way, is launch Darkly flag control settings from Glitch plugin, and this is a setup for that, so don't be intimidated. Now we have our tasks, and plugins really work very similar to tasks, right? So here's another plugin from web that requires to be a part of the config file. So we just add plugins here, just import them and add them, and all the plugins go to this file. And so that's the reminder. I covered this before. Now you have those files, right? And now we have plenty of config files. Like how do we deal with all the duplication between them? So what I like to do is I make a base config file now, and all the generic stuff that's in every single config file I like to put here, including the tasks and the plugins. So we just import them here and invoke them under setup node events. I have not had a case where I want to invoke different tasks or plugins per the deployment, but if you do, then you just leave these out of here and then have a setup node events property in one of the other configs. So for instance, let's look at local. All it has is as an environment value that's indicating what it is. So sometimes you may need some logic in your test where it's give it on this environment or only run it in such an environment. And the base URL. Everything else is merged from base config, this one, and I'm using low dash merge, so values aren't overwritten. Of course, there are other ways to do this with object spread and whatnot. It gets noisy. So that's why I like just getting low dash merge and doing it this way. So the only difference between all these files, these config files, are just the config for your environment and the base URL. So this way you reduce duplication as much as possible. That's all I'll talk about later.